Yeah, because I feel awful because we were gonna connect. I really wanted to connect. I was still looking forward to it. And then I can't remember what it was. Something came up on that day. And then I meant to reschedule it. And then it was like 6 months had gone. Like I was like, what the hell happened?
Well, there was a global pandemic in that time period, so it was like
Was it
everybody's playing. Oh, I mean, it was like
I
I think it
can't
was
remember.
really
Was it
early.
right at the
Yeah.
beginning? Right,
It was either right at the beginning or it was really early because I think maybe we even talked about it.
right. This is how sad I've become. I now drink de-alcoholized beer. I enjoy
No,
it. I actually like it. So it's, yeah.
that's the worst parts of beer without any of the advantages.
Well, it's slightly refreshing and it reminds me of my youth,
Oh,
so
well, okay. I'll give you like nostalgia.
it's pure nostalgia. And I could drink it with my son, which is kind of fun. So he goes, "Oh God, I need a beer." And he comes down, he grabs himself a 12-year-old grabbing this Beck's non-alcoholic beer. And like I could be a part
Oh,
of it. Yeah, it must have been before we actually went into full lockdown. That probably makes
it
sense.
definitely was.
And then it was just, uh, well, I don't know about you, but did it affect you that much? I mean, because you don't, oh no, I guess you were going to the work at the oil company, right?
Yeah. So I mean, as far as like my daily life, it didn't really change much. Like I still go to work, all that sort of stuff. So I mean, like I was an essential
Fairly,
worker.
oh, were you?
Yeah. I got the little letter and everything in case the police stop me.
So you've got a letter to say that you can go to work, and that is we keep the gasoline flowing.
Yeah, exactly. Got to keep the oil flowing. Um,
Well, acting was not, but it started up again now. They won't shut it down. They keep wanting us to come back, and I'm like, all right. Okay.
I mean, some of those movies have like millions of dollars on the line.
Oh God, yeah. Well, the one I just finished up one that we started before the pandemic. So it was the guy who did Shape of Water, Guillermo del Toro, who
Hmm.
I love, a tiny little part. I had like 3 days. Um,
Tiny little
but
part in
but
a
he
Guillermo del
specifically
Toro movie,
asked,
though. That's still awesome.
that's it. And he emailed to ask me to do it. And I was like, oh my God. Like it was the cutest. He was like, "Hello, dearest. I'm making a movie. Would you do a tiny little part for me? It's far beyond, all these usual." Anyway, so of course I was like, "Screw you. Take your Oscar and shove it up here." I, of course, went, "Yes, of course. Where do you need me when? And how can I help? And can I bring sandwiches?" So I show up and start shooting this thing. And I'm halfway through my first day. And they say, "Okay, guys, we got some stuff to talk about. Take an early lunch." We took an early lunch, sitting around chatting at lunch. Then they go, "Okay, come back. We're gonna do a set meeting. We're gonna take 2 weeks off while we figure out this pandemic thing." 6 months later,
Right, right.
we come back, and not only that, 6 months later we come back and we pick up where we left off. Like he's keeping all the stuff from 6 months ago, and I was like,
Wow.
"That's kind of cool in a way because it's going to add a real weirdness to the scene. I'm kind of excited to see how it pans out."
What's the name of the movie?
It's called Nightmare Alley.
Nightmare Alley.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's a remake of an old movie about basically a grifter during the Great Depression. So joins the carnival circuit, becomes a carny. But
Interesting.
it's typical for magical realism. The magical powers that people have has an almost a magical power to them, and even though everyone's
Nice.
just ripping each other off, and it's I loved Shape of Water, the script, absolutely loved it. I liked this one better because
Nice.
this
Yeah.
one is like it's everywhere. Like it's just, I mean, city to city, different carnival rides, and oh God, it's just amazing.
Nice. See, I really liked Shape of Water. It was obviously weird, you know, and
He always
like,
says that he's got the hardest movies to pitch at network things. He goes, "Okay, so it's this woman. She's in love with a fish, but not a fish man." Yeah. So
it's like I feel like he saw Hellboy and he really latched on to Abe Sapien,
yeah,
and he,
yeah.
and he was like, "We should expand on that character."
Well, I feel like Guillermo has like themes that he always or images that he always comes back to. And one of the jokes is that he's got like clocks and watches in everything. There's clocks
Interesting.
and watches, and like he's got the egg timer in I actually have an egg timer that he, as a crew gift, he gave egg timers, which I thought was really cute. So we've got the Shape of Water, masturbatory egg timers.
Nice.
Uh, but he's got sort of fascination with clocks and the images of time and stuff. and also the ability to breathe underwater seems to be like a big thing for him. Like it's just one of those things that he likes those. You know what it is? I think it's films like what is the Black Lagoon, Revenge of the Creature from the Black Lagoon, that kind of stuff. Like, he grew up on all that stuff, and I think he just wants to. Like, he's like a kid. He's like, I freaking love him. I
was like, it sounds like fun.
It is, but you know what's? It's weird. So before pandemic, you know, the relationship that I have with him is very much. Well, first off, I'm terrified of him. Like, he's one of those people you don't want to screw up. Like, mainly because you just don't want him to be disappointed in any way, shape, or form. But also because if you screw up, he lets you know. Like, it's, you know, why are you fucking my movie? You know, like, I'm not sure why he's French. But you know, I like the way he does that because he's passionate about what he does, and I feel like, you know, if I do something stupid, I want to be called out on it. I'd like to be called out on it. So you're always kind of terrified, but at the same time, like with Shape, he'd sort of call you over while they were setting up shots and say, like, okay, come talk about comic books with me now. What are you reading now? We talk about comic books, and then I would talk to him about I was talking to him a lot about assistive technology because we were doing I was hoping to do the documentary, which basically turned into Tech Bandits now, which actually I think is probably better in the long run anyways, because it's probably doing more good than just making a movie. And just that kind of stuff. Like, he's just a nerd. You get to geek out with him. And yeah, and this one, unfortunately, when you come back from the pandemic, you're dealing with shields and face masks. You're like, what do you need?
Right.
Oh, I'm an idiot. Okay, got it. I'll go. You know, my favorite direction was he said but Hewlett, just say your line and then go hide in the corner. It's like, as direction for you, buddy. Is that what got you the Oscar?
Yeah. Say your line and go hide in the corner. Oh no.
Yeah, say your line and go hide in the corner. Yeah.
So do you just like take off your PPE and jump in front of the camera?
Yeah, literally.
Wow.
Like, it's the stupidest thing. And then after a while, you sort of get to a point where the actors are basically out of PPE. They're like we're all in the same room. It's almost impossible to discuss a scene with a mask on.
Yeah, I mean, presumably there'd be like lines and stuff,
well,
you know.
Wait, that's gonna be something to really look out for on films and TV now. I mean, I imagine it's gonna be there's probably going to be a big industry for people who just remove, like, for digital makeup.
Just digital, yeah.
But, you know, we have actors who, you know, it's been 6 months. Their body types completely changed. Like,
oh,
you know
yeah.
I mean?
Especially you get that Rona 15 or whatever they've been calling it.
Luckily, I got fit and then fat again. So I sort of went up. I thought I was getting better, and then I definitely crashed again. And thank God, because I'm exactly the same.
Exactly the same. It's one way to do it.
The jiggly mess I was when I came into the pandemic now. So
you just sort of preloaded the fitness that you needed to pay that back off.
I didn't actually really lose any weight, but I think I got a little bit. I definitely felt like I was a little fitter because I was doing a lot of Jane had me doing a lot of yoga, but literally, like, it's almost like a weird relationship, isn't it? It's almost like where you find yourself, like, there's some days you're like, I got this. I'm no problem. And then other days it's like, I don't want to talk to anybody. You know.
For me, it's all about how much sleep I get. Yeah. Like if I get no sleep, which I often do because I'm either in the lab or at work and in the lab, and I get like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, the next day I have like no willpower, no desire to do anything but eat cake and sit down, you know.
So what do you do? Are you going to get to a point, do you think, where you can either get rid of the day job, or is that the hope? I mean, what's the plan on that?
That's the hope. I have some plans. I'm actually going to Austin tomorrow, which is part of the reason we need to do this today. So to look around, because I may be moving. I've
heard great things about Texas. I got to say, it just sounds like the new frontier. It sounds like
that seems to be where like a lot of the tech is going. That's where a lot of people are growing. Like a lot of the stuff that was Silicon Valley is moving out of Silicon Valley because like the cost of living and everything's crazy. So I think the new Silicon Valley is going to be somewhere in Texas, probably.
That's great. I can't remember if I've been to Austin or not. I think I went for like a training course a million years ago when I decided to quit acting and be an IT guy. I did some training out there, but that was.
Why would you quit? Why would you quit acting and be? This had to be before Stargate.
Oh yeah. No, I was sort of disillusioned. I was I was like 21, 22, and I loved all the. I mean, I'm a nerd. Like I'm nerd first.
Yeah.
Like I mean, I would prefer to be Doctor Who than be an actor pretending to be Doctor Who, if that makes sense. So
Yeah, I get that.
So and also with anything, if you do anything for 30 plus years, you just get, bored. But anyways, back then the issue was I was doing Kung Fu, Legend Continues, and dealing with a really drunk leading man who was just.
You were in Kung Fu: The Legend Continues? Yeah. Who were you in
Yeah.
Kung Fu: The Legend Continues? I haven't seen that since I was like 10.
I was the coroner, the young coroner guy who couldn't get a date.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Nicky Elder. I'd show up every so often. But what was funny was I was in a lot of episodes that never got shot because that guy was so drunk.
Wow.
And the schedule so much. He's really sad. And I was really disillusioned because I was like, wait a second, what? They're saying he's battled alcoholism and he's defeated it. And I'm watching this guy having alcoholic seizures on set.
Whoa.
I'm watching him beat the crap out of stuntmen because he's too drunk to do the moves, and it sort of spreads. Like the crew was getting a bit more lackadaisical about stuff. I came in once to get my makeup done after lunch and the freaking makeup artists were drinking. And I was like, oh my God, this is,
wow.
So I was like, screw this, I'm out. If this is the industry, this is wrong. This is wrong. I don't want to be a part of this. And
I can definitely see being disillusioned.
Yeah, it was, I mean, and also there's a weird guilt thing that kicks in, right? You get paid a ridiculous amount of money for when you work. What I didn't realize back then was you get paid that much money because if you were to do the math, by the end of your career, you spent a lot of time not working.
Right.
But as a kid, you're like, well, I'm going from,
Which isn't terrible though, because it's still like, you still get a lot of vacation days, right?
Oh God, yeah. I mean, so I've been diagnosed with ADHD, which is no surprise to anybody, or myself for that matter. But then it's one of the reasons why I think I love acting so much is because you could just it's one day you're one person, one day you're next. There's always something to be interested in. That's not terribly good for a science or specific technology job, right? I mean, you tend to get a little distracted. Like, what did I do yesterday? I went down to build my 3D printer, and at the end of the day, Jane said, how did it go? And I said, great. I've got all of my comic books organized in another closet. I haven't even touched a 3D printer. So,
Yeah, I'm definitely the opposite. I'm like, I think about one thing for years, and it's really hard for me to break focus enough to keep up with life, Like I get completely tunnel visioned on something, and it'll just stay my only thought for years, and I have a hard time keeping up with the world. Like I don't want to cut grass or change the oil in the car because I've got this project I'm working on for the next 5 years. I need to get working on it,
That's interesting. I mean, one of the things with ADHD is people always think it's just about bouncing between different things. You also have laser focus not when you want it. The amount of focus you can have on something can be intense, but it's never for very long. I find that's the problem. Is you get halfway through, and then you start beating yourself up about all the things you haven't got finished and stuff. So acting's just better that way for that. And as a living, I can't complain. I mean, as soon as the government allowed work in Ontario, I had 2 jobs. So I'm like,
nice.
And of course I'm like, I don't know. And Jane's like, no, I know. You're going to fucking work. Go. So he's like, get out of
the house.
Because she can't make her movie now because of the pandemic, right? You've got a massive budget or you have a tiny budget and you could sort of basically skirt around all the legal issues.
Right.
There's no way to do it.
Yeah.
So the gigs that I'm on are big, certainly one is a big company in Canada, probably one of the biggest. And then of course you got Disney Fox for Guillermo's thing. And the insurance on that as well, because they would have been in production long before pandemic. So
I think
you're focused. That's how you got into the biotech stuff then.
Yeah. I mean, once I had the thought, it's like I think I can make genetically engineered dogs. It's really hard to stop thinking about it.
Right. And how is that going? How is all that going? God, how's the COVID thing going? Gee, so much to talk about.
Yeah, so much to talk about. Yeah, and the other thing is another doc coming out soon that I'll be in on Showtime. That's my acting.
Oh, great.
Which if you Google me now, it comes up Google thinks I'm a TV actor because of Netflix.
Well, you got an IMDb listing and stuff?
Yeah, it does. It's crazy.
I saw there's the new series called Biohackers, but I think it's a drama of some sort, isn't it, or a sci-fi show?
Yeah, it's fiction. Yeah, it's interesting
Terrible.
though. It's not like high. It's not Dune, but
Right.
it's worth an hour and a half or whatever, 4 hours, or I forget how long it is, but it's entertaining. I'm
I like the other series.
Yeah, I'm super easy to please when it comes to like TV and video and stuff, because to me it's like, did you have a good time? Sure, and it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it. So I'm not hard to please when it comes to stuff like that. A lot of people get like really particular with stuff like that, and they want everything to be the greatest thing that ever was, but it's like that can't be. So
It depends on the mood. I mean, documentaries I'm a lot more critical of because I feel like if you're going to call yourself a documentary, like I just watched The Social Dilemma, and I was just pulling my hair out. It drove me crazy because I was like, you got some great points. Why do we have this stupid little sequence with like people pretending to be addicted to social media when you could just interview kids? Like, what?
yeah,
Why are you picking it up? Like,
yeah,
So anyway,
that
okay,
that's a little bit what I'm worried about um with the Showtime one.
mm,
It was shot very differently than the Netflix one. Like when Lior shot the Netflix one, it was very like Lior would come down, and a lot of times it was just Lior, and he would have like his
mm,
camera, and he would just film us doing stuff and talking to, and he would have like shots in mind, but he would just film it. Like he wouldn't change the lighting much. Sometimes he'd be like, "Hey, can you turn that lamp so it's shining in the camera or whatever?" But for the most part, he wanted it to be what it was. Um, and a lot of the Showtime people, yeah, and a lot of the Showtime people, even though and I'm not going to say I don't think it's going to be good. I have no idea. I haven't seen it yet. The trailer has me a little worried, but we'll see. I talked to the director, and she said the trailer doesn't really represent it well. So we'll see. But
you know, marketing also almost never discusses that with people. Like marketing is about getting people to watch the show. They don't give a fuck whether it's truthful or not. They just want to get people to watch. So, and it's
yeah,
always frustrating for directors as well because they're going like, "What? That's not the movie." They're like, "Yeah, but your movie's boring. I can't sell a movie about people actually doing real science. I got to sell a movie about the evils of whatever." And then I
yeah.
trick people watching it, and then they enjoy it. You know what I mean? So,
Hey, whatever works, I guess. But
yeah.
yeah, so we'll see how it plays out. But most of
What?
those people are coming from fiction, I think. So like it ought to be interestingly shot. Like they relit everything. Like they wanted
Mm,
this one shot of like me sitting on my pickup truck. Like,
mm,
and so I had to park it like at the end of my driveway because they wanted like this sort of country road behind me for the
right.
shot.
Right.
But then they didn't like the light of just like the world. So they like covered it all up and then relit everything with artificial light. And so like we'll see how it comes
Mm,
out. And they got this one shot where they had this like long camera lens. It was like a probe and had a tiny little lens. And they like
mm.
brushed my eyelashes with it. They shot my eye so close. So they got some
Really?
very artistic shots. And so we'll see how they put all that together. Um,
See whether it's artsy or pretentious or not. Depends on how it plays
yeah.
out. Look, I love them playing with it. I mean, you've got to make it interesting, right? I mean, why not play?
Yeah. And I'm fine with the visuals and stuff. My biggest thing is like the trailer makes it focus on uh, um, Aaron, Aaron
Hmm.
Treywick. And so, he's like the least interesting person in biohacking to me. And so the director
Who is Eric?
assured me,
Do I know?
yeah, you saw him a little bit. He's the guy, the like sleazy guy in the Netflix doc, that's like
Oh,
trying to take advantage of Tristan.
didn't he kill himself?
He died, but I don't think it was suicide. He had took a
Okay.
bunch of ketamine and got in a sensory deprivation tank and turned over.
Yeah. So just
So I mean,
more darwinism than anything else.
exactly. He accidentally killed himself. Although I'm afraid from the trailer that they're going to pitch it as people think it was a conspiracy and Big Pharma took him down. There were
Oh.
people saying that, but I hope that that's not the conclusion that the doc comes to, because it's a silly conclusion. But we'll see. I don't want to judge it before it comes out. Um, I'm always
And
an
are they at least
optimist.
giving you some cash? You get to, do they? No.
No, I've never been paid for anything.
I mean, I don't know how it works. Maybe you're not allowed to pay people for documentaries. But if you're going to be doing shots of people's eyes and stuff, and you're supposed to stand around wasting your time while they do all that shit, then I feel like then you really are acting.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that I've learned uh, too late is that what a lot of people do is they'll charge a location fee. It's like apparently you don't pay documentary subjects as if they're actors, but you
Right.
can charge them to use your location. So like they came to your house, so they pay you whatever to use your
Right.
house.
You got your truck. You got the road. You got the property. That makes sense. Yeah. Oh, that's
Yeah.
smart. Also, next
Which
time.
yeah, so next time, which I didn't
But
know anything about.
it's all publicity too, right? I mean, it's got to. But you're not selling anything.
I'm not selling anything. That's the problem.
Sorry, I couldn't buy a dog. We got a stupid pound
No,
rescue, and I didn't want it anyways.
no, it's fine. I've actually got two rescues now. My son rescued one that showed up about I don't know, about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. Turns out she's pregnant, so that's good. So we've got a pregnant rescue that just showed up, so that'll be exciting.
Probably why somebody's like,
Yeah,
I'm not raising that.
yeah. People have a habit of dumping dogs off around here. So like, it's the dog guy. Dump dogs off on him.
It's Manitoba's the same out here. We got a lot of dogs from Manitoba, and I guess they're just like they're prairie dogs or whatever, and they just yeah. I mean, they're not actually prairie dogs, but they're dogs from the prairie.
Right.
And so everyone I meet at the park who got a dog during COVID, it seems to have come from Manitoba. So yeah, but I really didn't. I didn't want a dog. We live in a city. I don't like dogs in the city.
Yeah.
It's fair. But apparently it's a democracy. So I was outvoted.
Depends on the dog. Depends on every kid needs a dog, I think. So it's good for a kid to have a
Well,
dog.
that was Baz's point, which I think was a good one. Was he said, "I've had a dog all my life, and now our dog's dead, and I haven't had a dog for a year and a half. I want a dog." And I was like, "Okay,
Yeah.
you know what? Like I raised you, I brought you into a house with a dog, and now you don't have one. All right, fine." So, and also,
Yeah.
I gotta say, I love her to bitch. She's a fucking pain in the ass, but she's kind of lovely.
That's how it works out. Like if you try to not like the dog, because you're stuck with the dog, but the dog knows if they just keep licking you and jumping in your lap, eventually you're gonna fall in love with them.
Oh my god, no, it's so bad, and so bad. And I'm always like, I'm always the first one to break all the rules with it too.
Hmm.
So what would you do in Austin? Would you get a place? Would you get a similar like big place for the dogs and everything, or?
Yeah, that's the plan. That's the plan. Uproot the whole shebang.
And
Yeah.
what's the market like out there now? Is the house market doing well, doing badly?
I don't know, like relative to what it was doing, but I mean, it's obviously much more expensive than Mendenhall, Mississippi. So,
Right. You got Redfin going?
a what?
Redfin? Do you use Redfin at all?
I don't know what that is.
Oh, you're welcome. If it's in Austin, get redfin.com, redfin.com. You can see the house. You can see what it's sold for previously. You can see
Oh,
you got maps. You've got images. Oh my God, it's a freaking. I will look at. There's a few places that I will check up on every so often. Primarily around the LA area. But right now, frankly, I'm really glad to be in Toronto because
nice.
LA is a disaster, and I'm really worrying about the states in general. Like November, what the hell is
I
going to happen?
know it's gonna be interesting one way or the other.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, even the Social Dilemma documentary about freaking social media was saying that they're worried about civil war. I'm like, we're heading there right now. Like,
No.
we just got our package for voting because we still vote out of California because
Mm.
you vote out of the last place you were in, and but it's so early. There's no information on any of the things that you're voting for. I mean,
Yeah.
other than the presidency stuff. But
Yeah, I think the debates are what, like a few days from now?
is it? Oh yeah, no, I gotta keep an eye on this stuff. I mean,
It's gonna be such a disaster.
it's look, and it's so funny because everyone up here is like, oh, Canada's got it all. I'm like, no, you don't. We've got a second wave coming, and and there's 5.5, 6 hour lineups for tests to the point where they've said, okay, no more tests unless you have symptoms.
Yeah, that's how it's been in a lot of places, like right off the bat. Yeah.
But
Although,
we've had 6 months. We've had
yeah.
6 months of no
Oh,
line,
mm,
right?
yeah.
Like it's been like everyone's like, this is great, it's no problem, And I think we're about to get hit by it. So
Yeah. I know we had like we have plenty of testing. I know that. Like I can go get coronavirus tests anytime, day or
mhm.
night, symptoms, no symptoms, and my insurance covers it. So,
It
you know,
does.
yeah.
So you've got good insurance with the company you're with then,
Yeah, I
or
mean,
if you,
Blue Cross Blue Shield, it's like it's nothing special, but
no,
um
but as long as you're
yeah, yeah, and then I think I think the CARES Act or whatever told basically made insurance companies cover coronavirus testing. So, I think any
and
insurance
would you
company
change
has to.
jobs if you
Yeah, probably. I would have to. The idea is to start something.
would you look for more?
Now, the idea is to start something
Or
other
start
than
new life?
oil. Yeah. So like maybe start a biohacking space or something like that.
Oh, I'm so excited. Like
Yeah.
that. I just, I look, things always change when they become a job. It's the case.
Yeah.
It's just, it's the nature of it. But if you can find that sweet spot, then, I, I mean, God, that's fantastic.
Do
I got
some
to get you to talk
teaching.
to,
Who?
I got to get you to talk to the kids sometime, to talk to the tech
Oh
bandits
yeah.
sometime.
Yeah,
Because
yeah, for
biotech is
sure.
coming times. And if you want, I can do like, because I've just been asking for donations. So I don't charge the kids or the families. I do donations. So I can even give you a stipend or something for coming and chatting with them for a bit if
Sure,
it's
but
okay with you.
yeah, I mean, but I can do it without that for sure. Yeah. Yeah, that
Or I'll buy you a beer the next time. When
oh,
I
that'd
get
be
you.
awesome. Yeah, we'll do
It'll
that.
be a fake beer. No.
I'll even drink a fake beer with you. How's that? The
The thing about the beer is there's a whole biotech angle to beer making, which
oh
so
yeah.
I actually want to make beer or ginger beer, but of course I don't. I'm trying also trying not to drink because that's the other thing about
Right.
the pandemic. I started drinking again in the pandemic, not like a huge amounts or anything, but just like the odd drink here and there. And my son said like, I kind of like it when we just get to drink our kid drinks together. And I was like, okay, done. So I stopped again, started on the kid drinks again, but yeah, I used to love. I mean, God, the microbreweries, all that kind of stuff. I used to love that stuff. So,
Oh yeah, there was a guy named Nick that did a talk at Biohack the Planet, the first one, and
oh,
he has a microbrewery in Florida, and he does some
mm,
really interesting stuff with all kinds of different yeast varieties, like collecting wild yeast and experimenting on them to see what they produce. Because
right.
it's really interesting. There's a whole thing like fermentation, so complicated, and there's so much stuff to it, and that's without even doing like genetic modification. But like you get the whole glowing beer. I made some like GMO glowing mead. It was awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, that's one of the guys that was there. I guess the time I was there was he didn't do a virtual uh, biohack the
Mm-mm,
planet, did he this year?
mm-mm.
Yeah, I was bugging him. I thought he should. He said it's just not the same. I was like, I know it's not, but at least it's something. Like it keeps people in the mix.
Yeah.
Um, I know it's not the same at all, but it's just something about keeping it in people's mind. I thought it might be a good idea. But uh, all right, so Austin, boy, that'd be exciting. And then what, how about the family feel about that? The family's happy about that too.
I mean, like my parents would rather I stayed a little closer, I think, but they want what like they know Mississippi's not really growing, you know,
Hmm.
like especially like Mendenhall, Mississippi. And so like my kids are about to be the age where they're going to start like doing things on their own, and Mississippi's kind of a trap, like the cost of living is low, but also like you earn really low. So you can afford to live here, but you can't afford to move anywhere else.
Right. Whereas if they were there, they could be earning more money, and if they want to come back, they can always come back, and
You can
they'd
always
actually
come
be.
back, or you could afford to move somewhere else or whatever. Like,
Hmm. So if you were to do a biohacking space, what do you do about the pandemic though? Like in the meantime, like trying to start a biohacking space now would suck.
oh yeah, yeah, it'll be months. It'll be next year sometime. So
Because
we're just going to go like check it out.
what I've been trying to do, and so I was doing tech bandits at the schools. There was
Mhm.
a strike, so I had the kids at the house because the schools wouldn't let me in the schools because they whatever.
There was a strike,
Get
like the teachers were on strike.
the teacher strike before the pandemic. So
Oh,
teacher strike, school was basically running at bare minimum. There was no extracurricular or anything. I said, well, I'm not a school. I'm not part of the school. Can I use can I still just come in and use like a hallway or the library? No, you can't do that because you'd have to have a teacher and the teachers aren't allowed to help you with that. I was like, I don't need the teachers. Like, the teachers don't help me anyways. But it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, but they're not there. So, okay. I was like, fine. I said, okay, then all these days off that they were doing like rolling strikes. So I said, okay, great. On the days when you strike, come to my house and we'll just take stuff apart. And so I had all the kids down here pulling stuff apart. It was great.
Nice.
And then we went into lockdown mode. And so I started doing Zoom chats, which were great, but I was feeling very like it's 6, 8 kids, which was great, really fun. But I was like, there's no way to, I mean, it's so closed, it's so privileged. And then the whole Black Lives Matter thing happened. And I was like, okay, this is fucking nuts. I've got like, it's not a bad mix. I mean, actually, we do have a couple of kids of color involved as well, just by coincidence. But I was like, we need to open this up to people outside of our privileged little local scheme. Like,
Right.
I'm totally fine to go to the local school when it's a physical thing. But if we're online doing Zoom stuff, this should be open to anybody.
Yeah,
So
makes sense.
I started doing Twitch streaming. We started Twitch streaming our chats. And it's like a revelation because this is where the kids live. Like they're dual screening. They've got a game going in the background. They're not really listening, but when there's something that they're interested in, they pop in, they pop out, and instead of fighting them, I've just gone like, great, I'm here for 2 hours. We're talking about stuff here. I got a list of things I'd love to talk about, get your opinion on. Sometimes we get through them, sometimes we don't. It's really random. The kids can go off their own direction if they want. We talk about stuff. But by doing it online, it's opened up to not just the kids, but to other parents, other educators and stuff. And
Nice.
people have started donating money that aren't even related to the program anymore. So
they can just do that through
like
Twitch.
I just do it through Twitch. Yeah, so I've got Twitch, and then I was just using about web cameras, and then when because I got a little bit of Patreon money, I started getting extra little cameras and stuff, and little microscopes for them to look at. And I really want to start doing a biotech component as well because I just think it'd be fun. They're terrified of everything. It's ridiculous. Like certainly my kids are. Like you say hacker, they're like, oh no, I don't do a hack. I don't want to go to jail. I'm like, no. But learn how to hack computers. It's about learning how to make them do things that they weren't designed to do. And you can do the same thing with biology. And
biology.
like, oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's definitely scary to people. I find, or at least I've found, most kids are more open to the idea of like altering cells and biology than most adults.
Yes.
And I think that's probably just like the general idea of kids being more open to novelty than adults are anyway.
Well, and they're not seeing they don't have none of the repercussions in mind either, right? They're focused on specifically what's happening now. They tend not to think about where these things could go in the future.
Right.
Well, that and anybody who's designed a social network by the sound of it too. That's interesting. I just wonder if there's something. I mean, I'm just wondering if there's some way, because I know Josiah is worried about this too, from trying to get a teaching thing going, and I just wonder if there's some kind of a network we could set up or something like a virtual biohacking makerspace type thing where people could actually. Because one of the things I've started looking into for me is I got this garage. We don't have a car, although we may have to get a car now because COVID. We used to do subway all the time. Right now, I'm worried about it. But potentially to turn the garage space, or maybe open this up so it's a little better to have a couple of kids in instead of the usual 15 or something. I just have like 2 at a time or something. But have it live, have it Twitch streaming, so that other people can see what's going on. If they want to follow along, or they've got questions, or they've got, that it becomes like an online, it becomes like truly like a virtual lab where you may not have all this equipment, but we have it.
Right.
So you tell us what you need us to do, and we can do it and tell you what the results are, type thing. Not you, but I mean.
Yeah. The people streaming. Yeah. Or the viewers on Twitch. Yeah. That's smart. And then the interesting thing would also be like, at that point, you could expand it to be like more than just one physical location, because you could have like different things all kind of contributing to that one thing if you wanted to.
Literally be going 24 hours a day.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
That's actually hard. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, you could literally have almost like different time slots for different. That's actually really smart. I've hooked up with this guy Barnacles, who's just like a geek brother from another mother. We're both just complete squirrels in that we can't stay on
With a
top
name
of.
like Barnacles, he's got to be a geek.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's Jerry. His name is Jerry something or another, but he was previously at Microsoft, and he got fired, not fired, he got let go from Microsoft, after like 20 years working there or whatever, and basically did a rant about working at Microsoft that got like 10 million views or something on YouTube. So he started a
Wow.
YouTube channel, and now he earns his money streaming.
Hey, sometimes you get lucky.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I mean, Jesus, and a very good severance package too, apparently. But anyways, I mean, he's just got a great audience too for people who are looking to do new and interesting things as well. So, and he's brought up biotech a few times, and they always get it wrong, always.
It's easy to do.
Yeah, and I was on a couple of shows with them, and I'm like going, I don't know enough about this, but I think this, so you should definitely, if you're up for it, you should definitely talk. We should come on. Maybe we could come on together someday or something.
Yeah, be fun.
He's got a big audience. They're active. Like they get involved in stuff. So even if you wanted to say like, I'm looking to do something in the Austin area, there's a good chance that somebody there could at least point you in the right direction, or even give you a place to stay while you're looking around or something. You know what I mean?
Be interesting.
I don't promise this. They're not, psycho killers or anything. But,
Yeah, it's okay.
Who knows?
It's been a long time learning to fight, so I'll be all right.
There you go. That's right. Good point.
Yeah, it ought to be interesting, and it'll be interesting to see how coronavirus turns out, because like the timeline is really in flux. Like I really think there'll be a vaccine coming out in the U.S. in November, like October 30th, or like November 1st or something like that. Oh yeah, for sure. I'm almost certain.
Why do you feel so good about it? What's your sense?
Well, so like our vaccine worked, so it's not that hard. It did.
Whoa! Back up. Your vaccine worked?
It worked. I just got the results back. Like I just did the testing like yesterday or day before yesterday on Daria's samples, and so all three of us got positive results.
Holy shit.
So like if three people in like garages and sheds and stuff can make one that works, surely these pharmaceutical companies can make one that works, right?
But I guess the concern is that you're not going to get sued the way they are if there's an issue. So I guess it's more about,
in the US, there's legislation. They can't get sued from vaccine injuries.
Oh, great.
I know, right? So they're safe. Their investors are safe.
You figured out a way to block the virus from connecting? Is it something about the protein? Is it the spikes?
So the way it works, it's a DNA vaccine. So it's literally gene therapy. Basically, you just inject yourself with huge, just ridiculous amounts of DNA, and it's like a massive. It's like, well, metric units. It's 2.5 milliliters per injection. So like in a syringe, that's pretty intimidating, right?
I feel that. Yeah, that's like a water pistol.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like a pretty decent. Like it's not like a little. It's like pretty. It's scary looking, but it was like intramuscular injection. So I had to do two. It was 4 total injections, right? So 1 in each arm, and then 2 weeks later, 1 in each arm. And that's a total of 10 milligrams of DNA. And like of all the DNA injection that I've done in all my previous stuff, all together, I've done 1 milligram total of DNA ever, until this time where I did 10 times that in 2 weeks. So huge amount of DNA. And definitely the most DNA anybody's ever done outside a clinical trial. But
you're doing it yourself.
Yeah. So it was me, Josiah, and Daria. It's all plasmid.
Is Daria from the Czech Republic? Is she the one?
Well, Ukraine.
Sorry. Damn it, I always get those confused. Yes, fantastic woman. I talked to her. She did the Makerspace chat.
Yeah.
Yeah. The biohacking space. What do you call it? What do you call it?
It's a biohacking space. Yeah.
So you all did it. You all did exactly the same thing to sort of prove it that it all worked. how did you come up with a solution, or was it just a
Oh,
basic?
so we
Travel?
just ripped it right out of a paper. So there was a paper that came out. It was like May 20th, I think, and they did a DNA vaccine trial in macaques, and so they
Right.
published their results in May, and then me and Josiah looked at it and we were like, we could totally do this. This is doable, and so we were like, let's try it. It ought
Right.
to be fun, right? And so basically, they just injected the macaques with
Wait a
10
second.
milligrams.
You said it could be fun, but is it possible it could have been something other than fun?
Um, I mean, it could be boring, right? It could just not work and be disappointing.
Okay.
I mean,
Because you seem pretty conservative on that. Like you're pretty good about not jumping into these things.
yeah,
In reality.
I'm not crazy. Yeah, and like the biggest issue would be like endotoxins or like some weird off expression or something like that. But for the most part, all this is stuff that I've worked with before. So it's all gene therapy stuff. Like I've been working on the full statin gene therapy thing for years now. And I've injected myself with a lot of DNA, obviously not this much, but I'm pretty comfortable with all the pieces of it. Um, but all we did was take the coronavirus gene sequence for the spike protein.
Mhm.
We codon optimized it for humans. So we recoded it so that human cells would read it really well, which didn't necessarily need to be done because it's already expressing properly in human cells, but that's what they did in the macaque study, so that's what we did. You have to translate it from RNA to DNA anyway because coronavirus doesn't have a DNA. So
Right.
either way, so we make a spike protein, and we did there's some interesting online tools that will do like predictive algorithms on like how it'll express and look for like splicing sites and weird stuff. But anyway, so we put like our synthetic spike protein DNA sequence in a plasmid, same plasmid they used, got a big giant mess of it made, and then then we actually did a whole bunch of pre-testing, which is what took like 10 weeks or whatever. We transformed it into human cells in a petri dish, and then extracted the spike protein from those cells, and then tested that we had spike protein. So we knew that the DNA that we had would cause human cells to express spike protein properly and all that sort of stuff. We did quality control stuff, and then injections. And then 2 weeks later, another round of injections, and we took samples all along the way. And then we tested our antibody levels. And then there's a really interesting kit that they sell, which is a surrogate virus neutralization assay. So they take a 96 well plate, right?
Mhm.
And they treat the wells with the ACE2 receptor, the human ACE2 receptor, which is what spike protein binds to, and then that's how it knows it's found a human cell, and then it has a conformation change. So the spike protein changes shape, and then it fuses with the human cell. Well, they put a bunch of those ACE2 receptors on here, and then they took the receptor binding site, so just the part of the spike protein that binds to the receptor, and they conjugated it with this enzyme that turns another chemical a color. So basically, what you do is you take your blood sample and dilute it and blah, blah, blah. But you take your blood sample and you or really serum sample, all the blood cells are removed, and you mix it with the receptor binding domain of spike protein and the enzyme that's bound to it. And then if you have antibodies that binds to that receptor binding domain in such a way that it prevents the receptor binding domain from binding to the ACE2 receptor, then later when you take that sample and you put it in the plate in the wells, it won't bind because the antibodies have prevented the interaction of those two proteins. And then when you wash all that away, because it's not bound, it'll wash away, and the enzyme will be gone. So when you add the chemical at the end, it won't turn colors, or at least it'll turn less colors. If you have more antibodies, you'll get less of them and you have less color at the end. If you have no antibodies, then you'll have, lots of them will bind and you'll have lots of color. And then you can use a spectrophotometer to measure the difference relative to some controls.
Wow. Wow. So then so you've tested it so that so you're now expressing what's necessary to stop the virus from connecting.
So
It's
what
very
you
thin.
do is the DNA is for just the spike protein. So you inject yourself with that. It transforms some of your cells. They express the spike protein for a few days. Your body recognizes that this is not a human protein and creates antibodies against it, just like you would if you were infected with something. But because it can't replicate, it's not an active infection. It's just some of your cells are expressing spike protein. And so
Your
your
body
body,
instantly.
yeah, so your body
Antibodies.
learns how to make antibodies and also reactive T cells against the spike protein. And so if COVID comes in your body, coronavirus comes in your body, it'll recognize those antibodies will recognize the spike proteins, bind to them, neutralize them, prevent them from interacting with ACE2 receptors.
Now, the next question: have you actually come up against the virus itself?
No. So we haven't done, well, not that I know of, but we haven't done challenge trials, and we're not going to do challenge trials.
Right. Not
But
worth
they
the risk.
Not worth it, but also it wouldn't necessarily tell us anything. So even if all three of us like found some coronavirus and like swabbed somebody who was coughing and hacking and then just like
Oh God. God. Oh yeah. No, I can see why that might not be top of your list of things to do.
yeah, but even if we did do that, even if we did do that, it wouldn't be it wouldn't necessarily tell us everything because like if like say we don't get sick, like if a positive result, like if we got
Yeah,
sick,
possibly you might not have got it anyways. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, and like we're all sort of young, healthy people, so like there's a good chance we'd be asymptomatic anyway. So
I'm not
so
old enough that I'm here for you.
so
It's
is it
real.
because we're just asymptomatic or are we asymptomatic because the vaccine worked? And so that's why like real clinical trials when they're doing this stuff, they do like tens of thousands of people.
Right.
And so that way they
They're
can get
not
like
going to have time to do, really, are they? They've got to basically try something before they get to truly.
yeah.
They can't know for sure at this point, right? They don't have time for it, do they?
Well, I mean, like Moderna's doing, they got 30,000 people recruited. I know 3 people that are in their clinical trial right now.
You know what? Now, as soon as I say that, I go, of course, because who the hell isn't going to try it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take it. I'll do the COVID test. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I've been
And
doing
then,
COVID, by the way, I've been doing COVID tests every other day
wow.
because of production. I'm doing COVID tests every other day. Now, not the
Whoa.
real, not the skull fucking ones. The just your nostrils. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah. So we
It
did,
really does, like, it's horrendous. I mean, it's just. Ugh. Have you had it? Have you had it done?
oh, I did the antibody test. So it was just a blood draw.
All right. Okay. Right. So
Yeah. So,
that's for your, and that was for your own experiment, right? Of course. Right.
yeah. Yeah. So that'll tell you if you've got antibodies, but it won't tell you if you've got active infection.
Right. Right. God, that's pretty exciting, though.
Yeah. And like Moderna's doing
Now
something
you.
very, very similar. Like they're just doing
Mhm.
really just RNA for the receptor binder domain. So their whole thing is like smaller. So it's a smaller dose because like it's about the number of units, not so much the mass. So like it's
Mhm.
like having short chains and long chains. Like a ton of short chains is a lot more chains than a ton of long chains.
Right. Right.
So having a shorter molecule allows them to have the same number of molecules, so the same number of that gene, but in a smaller dose.
Amount. Right. Of
Yeah.
course. Of course. So they're just a little bit more efficient in what they're doing.
Yeah, it's just way harder to do. It's not very DIY-able. Like RNA is much trickier to make and purify than DNA. DNA is like so easy to make.
Right. God, that's so cool. Now, do you publicize this? I mean, what do you do? What do you do with this information now?
Well, we kind of had decided to just like not talk to the media. And we did talk to Bloomberg. And we had a bunch of different media want to talk about it, but we turned them all down. And so we're probably going to send another thing to Bloomberg with the like final results. And
Right.
uh, just because the reporter's a good friend, but
You like,
you know, yeah, and because like it's interesting. Like media is an interesting thing. Like especially for me. Like I'm not selling stuff, so like it doesn't help me. It just helps the media company. Like if I put a big thing on you know Fox or whatever, then Fox makes money off my story, and what like so it's
well, if you're looking for a job in Austin, that's a good way to. It could be. I mean, it could be useful for that. I mean, if people know who you are,
yeah,
it could help
yeah,
for that.
yeah, something
Or
like
for
that. I
fun.
mean, yeah, and it could help. Like maybe people join my Patreon or something like that. But you know, in general, like most media is just it just spends your time, and they make money off of spending your time. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, you're basically working for them for free.
yeah, exactly.
Providing the content. Yeah.
You're working for a big corporation for free.
There's also crazy amount. I'm getting the most ridiculous number of requests for content stuff now, all the time, like all the time. Like, you know, we're doing a Stargate reunion, we're doing this, we're doing that. It's all, and I'm just like, I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of done now. Like, I just
Really?
between having to have, you know, between conversations I would normally have over coffee with friends that they do like this now. And between doing stuff myself live, I just don't want to spend any more time on it. Like, I just feel like it's
It's a
like, you
lot of
want
camera time.
and I'm online all the time anyways. You want to ask me questions, ask me when I'm on my thing. Why do I
Right.
want to go, you know, I mean, I guess to expand, I suppose to expand, but I just feel like there's only so many times you want to, as you say, like, you want to be able to, in a way, instead of giving it to a news outlet, you could post it on your site. You
On
could
your
post it
stuff,
on,
yeah. Yeah, if a reporter wants to get the information, it's there on my YouTube channel. Come get it. You know.
right. You got to check out Twitch. Twitch is much better monetized than YouTube. Much better.
Okay. I'll check out Twitch.
Um,
One of my big problems is my streaming quality is so terrible.
Shit, of course. Well, wait till you get to Austin then. But once you get to Austin,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, well, because you can subscribe. There's Prime subscriptions, right? Which, so they come with Amazon Prime. You get a free subscription. So people can subscribe to the channel using their Amazon Prime free subscription, and you
Oh.
still get half of the money that they haven't had to pay for.
Oh, interesting.
So right away, you'll get a bunch of things. You'll get a bunch of people who can sign up who were already on whatever.
Yeah, that's good because like we had issues with Patreon. Because like my Patreon's done fine, but like we made a group, like the three of us as a group, like a hacker group. Yeah. So we were the CDC.
Could have had something to do with it, but yes, okay.
Well, we were the Central Dogma Collective, which is like it's like a multi-pun. So I like puns.
Yeah. No, I love it. But I could see them thinking like, these guys
Yeah.
are trying to pretend to be the CDC, you know, like, yeah.
Yeah. Well, the thing that they said was like that you weren't allowed to like reward patrons with biological things, and like DNA is technically chemical. You know, like it's like biological, but purified DNA is just a chemical. But like at the same time, you can. Yeah, we were going to give people the plasmid, like small amounts of it, not like the thing. I can see why they got pissed off, right? Like they don't want to be caught up in something if the FDA gets mad. But
you could have thrown out the little stabs like that other guy was doing.
Yeah, exactly. That's the plan. Like we have like that we're giving away to like 1,000 people who want it. Like, you know, it's just like freeze dried little tubes like this, you know.
Yeah, the stabs. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what would people do with it? Would people then have to cultivate it themselves before they inject it, or they just...
Yeah, I mean, if somebody wanted to do experiments with it, they can cultivate it. They can, you know, get more of it made. They can do all kind of stuff. But but I mean, we also published all the sequences, so you could also just take the sequence data and do the same thing. You know, it saves you sequencing costs because, yeah, it was like $1,500, $2,000 worth of sequencing or something like that. So if you just give that away, then that prevents people from having to do that if they want to do more research with it. Because like it worked on 3 of us, but maybe we got lucky, you know. But I think it's really interesting because it's such an accessible technology, and it really sort of folds into some of my other stuff for like gene therapy stuff, but also it's such an accessible technology for vaccines. Because like I don't think it's really necessary for this particular pandemic, but if there was a pandemic that was much worse, like avian flu has a 65% mortality rate. So if coronavirus had the same number of cases but 65% mortality rate, like there'd be no CDC, there'd be no World Health Organization. Everybody in the world would just be hunkered down. All the power would be out. It'd be a massive global disaster.
Right.
And you know, there'd be like millions of dead. And so you know, we'd be looking at the only chance you'd really have of making a vaccine would be if like people could do it. So the more people that know how to do it, the more probability that one will pop up somewhere. And this is such a DIY-able technology, such a DIY-able approach. And we didn't do it in the most DIY-able way, because we did lean on some other companies just to make it easier. But, you know, all the pieces, like if you had a decent lab space, and that stuff's just going to get easier.
And cheaper. So, I can't believe how much Josiah is selling some of that stuff for now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And
sorry, there's quite a lag. There's like
oh, sorry. What I can't believe is how expensive everybody else is selling stuff for, especially some of the stuff like antibiotics.
Well, this is why I got into assistive tech, because I couldn't get over. I was like, wait a second, I'm looking at, like, I'm seeing these little Arduino boards and Raspberry Pis and sensors and all this kind of stuff being sold for cents, you know, or like a couple of bucks here and there. And then I walk into the school for kids with developmental physical disabilities, and they're charging them literally hundreds of thousands of dollars for a fucking ad. Like, I mean, I'm like, this is just wrong.
Exactly.
You know? So no, I feel I think it's probably one of the reasons why I sort of got excited about this stuff in the first place. You know, and also I truly feel like these, like the biohacking is at that electronic, remember those electronics kits, the 150 in one electronics kits? We need that for biotech, because the kids need to understand that this is something that isn't just the realm of the big companies, or the weirdos. You know what I mean? Like they have to know there should be nothing wrong with getting yourself a biohacking kit.
Exactly. And that's a lot of what I credit Josiah with having done. You know, like a lot of his kits and stuff go to schools and stuff like that. But I tell you, one of the things I was talking about in a stream I was doing yesterday, was, you know, it's like, it needs to get to the point where it's just like magic gene juice, where you don't even have to really understand it on a deep level. You know, it just needs to be like something you know how to use, not necessarily something that you understand on the deepest level. Like, nobody should look at code, you know, like you're looking at, you know, A, T, C, G. That's like looking at binary. You know, nobody programs in binary. That's ridiculous. You know, but we're still there with DNA, and it's ridiculous. You know, like I've had to like like every plasmid I've ever made, I've ever designed, every time I've ever done genetic design, I've hand modified it, you know, on the level of single letters, you know, of code. And nobody does that in tech because it would be ridiculous, you know? And so like that whole infrastructure of making it where you don't have to like know the deep wizardry to make it work, you know, you just plug and play parts, and then things happen. Like, it's like how anybody can build, anybody can build a drone, but you don't have to know how to program
or aerodynamics or lift, you know. I mean, no, exactly. And I think that's part of I think there tends to be a lot of sort of terminology and you know, look over here. Same thing with the computer world, where people talk about scratch programming not being real programming. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, the reality is that if it can do what you can do with other programming languages, then it's a programming language. And I get really irritated because everyone's like, oh, girls got to code, kids have got to learn how to code. I'm like, no, they don't. Because the reality is, by the time they're in the workforce, there are going to be tools. They just need to know how code works, or the larger concept of it. But the idea that we've all got to be in the trenches doing this stuff is just nuts. Also, it's boring. I want to get the stuff made. The process of it is not fun. Seeing something happen is what's fun.
Exactly. That, like, I'll never get dog breeders to learn like what's the best promoter for this particular cell type, but I will get them to know, okay, I want a dog that has no genetic diseases and tiger stripes. So what magic gene juice do I need to just pour into the sperm to make that happen?
Yeah, Jesus, that's so. But we're there. I mean, that's how cool is that?
Yeah.
Do you think the dogs is that a lucrative thing? Do you think is that something you could get into? Like, I mean, I'm just trying to think about what's your business. Like, how do you
get out of the oil field?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. I mean, the dogs maybe. I think more like if I can. Well, it depends on the FDA, but if I can facilitate other dog breeders into getting into this world, like if I can be the guy that makes the magic gene juice, I could see that being lucrative.
Right.
You know, you could have a kit that all dog breeders could use, and you'd be like, this kit fixes hyperuricemia, and then your
Mhm.
customers are everybody who has dogs that are suffering from hyperuricemia. You know, then they can breed a generation that doesn't have that, and then you can just keep working on the next thing. So like, you know,
Mhm.
that way all I have to do is just like genetic design and testing, and then you can just turn each one into a kit and different breeders all over. It's because like I'll never fix them all. I'll never fix them all. Like there's no possibility that I have enough effort output in a lifetime to fix all the genetic diseases that dogs have. So I need lots of people involved. So I need to make it simple, and I need to build infrastructure that allows lots of people to get involved. And so that's what makes it possible.
Right. So you need the 301 electronics kits for dog breeding, and then
Yeah,
people can buy it and figure out what they're going to do with it from there.
exactly. Exactly. You have like a base kit, and then you just like pick your genes.
Hmm. Are you? I mean, any plans to work with Josiah or anything? Is
Yeah,
Josiah is spreading out
yeah,
this
yeah.
kind of stuff?
Yeah, yeah. Well, we're talking about some teaching stuff, so I don't know how
Yeah.
much he wants to talk about what our plans are yet, but
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
I
His
like him looking to him. I talked to him, I think, sort of like at the beginning of the pandemic, a bit about because I thought, oh, great, I'll do some. Maybe now's an opportunity to do some biohacking stuff with the kids. But of course, I
yeah,
mean, I don't think I could just send the families kits. We talked about doing kits, and we could have kits, and we could distribute them to everyone else. I just don't. I don't know. I think it probably makes more sense for me to maybe do some stuff and film it, or have like
yeah,
one or two kids with me while we do it or something. But even then, it's so hard to be socially distanced. I mean,
yeah.
I do. We did a PC build the other day, and I mean, we were pretty good about. I mean, I kept all the windows open. I had masks. She had a mask. I had the fans going. Like I did everything I could. But the reality is, it's it's just not.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, like
COVID
yeah.
season.
Exactly. That's what a lot of it is, unfortunately. Like you know, uh I try not to get on in internet arguments with people, but I see so much stuff that really is just theater. Like I saw a paper came out the other day that was just so poorly designed. It was so silly. They were talking about how like the
Mm,
fit of a mask doesn't seem to make a difference in its ability to filter um, particles coming out of your mouth when you're talking or coughing or whatever.
right.
But the way that they tested that was they had people stick their head in a laminar flow hood, right? And then they talk into a funnel, right? That then leads to a device that detects particles. And so they have them talk and
Right.
cough and whatever. And so the whole idea of mask fit is like this space, the seal surface, not
Yeah.
just right here. So like if you want to know how many particles are winding up coming out here, you can't measure that right here. You got to
And
measure
it's
the
all
whole
being sucked
space.
up anyways. It's all being taken up anyways. So
Yeah, it's like
it
the
would be an
reason your
unnatural
glass,
airflow.
yeah, the reason your glasses fog up and stuff when you're breathing in a poorly fit mask is because your breath is going up. So like if you're talking about like
Yeah.
anything that's relevant to like the grocery store or like particles in the environment, you have to look at that stuff. And so they were comparing different masks, different mask
Mm.
types, cloth and paper and N95s and that sort of stuff. And they were like, it all seems to be about the same. It's like, yeah, of course, because your experiment is so poorly designed, it can't measure the thing you're trying to measure. And it's
I think
like,
it's something. To me, it's like it's just something. It's going to stop if you were to sneeze or cough or someone else was. I feel like it just like my father, who is a doctor,
yeah,
retired and incredibly pig-headed. He only wears a face shield. And I'm like, Dad, that's not stopping airflow around. He's like, I know, but it's just about it stops me from sneezing. It stops other people from getting stuff on me. There's only so much that's going to get sucked in. I realize that's because he's outside. Like
yeah,
he just doesn't go anywhere where there's people. Like he
yeah,
just won't do it. My wife,
yeah.
my stepmom has had cancer return 4 or 5 times,
Oh,
and
goodness.
so she's got to be really fucking careful, like
Yeah,
really. You know, and so he is, I mean, so they basically just don't go out. But yeah, the mask thing is, to me, it's just like, look, what's the, like, I was like, what's the big deal? Like,
Yeah.
I'll just wear a mask just in case. Like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
when
My
people
whole
up there,
thing, my whole thing with the masks is like, you know, a badly made mask is just theater, you know? Like
yeah, yeah,
I saw a guy the other day
right,
that had,
wearing it under your nose.
yeah, or even just like, it was such a thin material. It was like a sock with some ear holes cut in it, you know? And it was just like, it was like the thinnest mesh material you could imagine, right? And it's like, that's just to
Yeah,
comply. Yeah.
was Bill. I like Bill Nye's thing, which was like, if you can blow out the candle, the mask sucks. I thought that
Right,
was a great.
exactly. Yeah,
Basically, if there's
yeah.
enough meth coming out that can blow out a candle, then you're not wearing a fucking mask. Yeah, the
I'll
other
tell
thing I
you,
love is people
I'll tell you a story.
who wear the
I had,
masks on their arms.
yeah, on their
They're wearing
arms.
technically they're wearing a mask.
Oh,
Yeah.
gee, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that. But like, so I'll tell you a story about one of these. I had one of these on, and when you're doing a lot of work, like a lot of times you'll use a lamp to create an updraft, so that like if you're working with like a petri dish or whatever, and it's open, the updraft keeps like spores and stuff from falling directly into your
Ah,
plate. So you get like some useful airflow upward.
little
And
hood.
so, yeah, exactly. Because I don't have a hood or whatever, so it's kind of old school. But I actually learned my aseptic technique stuff is all from brewers, not from like biotech people. But it works the
Right.
same. Um, it's just less equipment. But so the flame thing is going there, and I also, when I'm being really careful, will a lot of times spray my gloves with ethanol. And if I'm being really, really careful with something, sometimes, like if I'm not using antibiotics in my plates or whatever, I'll wear the mask so I don't accidentally breathe on it. So I had sprayed my gloves with
Yeah.
alcohol, and I had the fire going, and I had the mask on, and I caught my hand on fire. So the glove's on fire, and I'm sitting there trying to blow it out, and the mask is on, so I'm not doing anything.
Oh my God! Of course. Jeez, you got to watch out, I guess, because you're spraying. Basically, you're spraying a combustible material.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, Jesus,
I've done
dude.
that a few times too. I did a biosafety course in Baltimore with ABSA, the American Biosafety whatever. And so
Was
they
this
gave
for
us
your
the same.
own stuff? For your own stuff,
Uh,
or for the?
oh no, this was for my own stuff. So there's a biohack space called Bugs in Baltimore, and they invited us up there. And you know they set it all up. It was really great. They you know paid our way to go to the thing. It was awesome. They invited various biohackers from around the country, and we all got the same training that ABSA gives to biosafety officers. That way, when we go back to our various places, we bring that training as like sort of almost hypothetical biosafety officers to our various places, right?
I want to do it. All right,
Yeah,
that's great.
it was
Yeah.
really interesting. It was really interesting. But so I told, you know, so at various times we're talking about things, and I told them some of my stories, and every time like that, there was this one particular person from ABSA who was just like, every time I told a story like,
Please don't tell me anything else. Please don't tell me anything else. Yeah. Uh, yeah, it's got to be just like terrifying for them because they're
oh
used to
yeah,
dealing with all of these like organizations, like what all the every step check marked, and
oh, and also
and you
all
got
the
like,
but they told much scarier stories.
oh
Like
God,
it was really interesting. Like one of the women, she had worked in various like BSL-4 labs all over the world for years and years. And like that's biosafety level 4. So that's like the nastiest stuff. That's like, I think Ebola is BSL-3 right now because there's a vaccine.
oh
But
God,
like BSL-4 is stuff that will like, it's infectious to humans, it'll kill everybody. We have no way to treat it, and it's just like super transmissible. So anybody working in one of those labs has like a lot of rules to follow. And you know,
yeah,
you talk about, you know, like, oh yeah, there's one time, you know, they had been injecting rats with this like horrible virus, and the guy like goes to recap the syringe and stabs himself in the finger, you know, and it's like, oh hell, it's like the
but
stories like that.
what do you Like, what do you do in a
Well,
situation like that?
you just immediately start giving him medical treatment, you know? Like, at
Oh,
least you know the moment you're infected and not like it's been 2 weeks and you got terrible symptoms.
right. Yeah, that's true. You know exactly what you're dealing with and when.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my God, it's terrifying. I mean, that's everyone's fear, isn't it? I mean, that's the police fear when you were making an arrest that you're going to get stabbed by some junkie's needle or any of that.
Yeah.
We've got a friend she's one of the world experts on black widow spiders, and she has a lab
Mm,
that has most black widow spiders like in captivity, like in ever. And
interesting.
she was telling me they've never had an accident. They're
I'm
fairly
listening.
docile, and then then literally the day after she told us how safe it was, one of her students uh, was not goofing around, but made a silly mistake and got bitten.
Oh, no.
And so of course they had to rush, yeah, the whole thing. And she was saying like it was the student was so embarrassed because she's like, oh my God, like I did literally everything wrong, like
Oh,
everything I'm
no.
not supposed to do. It was just like every shortcut, so it wasn't her fault, but
Right.
it's just the idea. And again, but because they know the spider, the specific spider, everything they can get it sorted pretty
Sure do.
quick.
Yeah.
Um,
And there's other things like chemical problems and like there was one where they had like a they had like a Bunsen burner in a um uh which is like hooked into a gas line, like it's not got its own contained fuel source inside a biosafety cabinet, and it like had like a leaky valve and just started recirculating the gas over and over until it exploded.
oh God.
Yeah. So
Was
it's
it?
like all was that?
Is anyone hurt?
No, no. So the woman who was doing it, she was a student at somewhere, but she was not hurt. She just almost burned the lab down. Luckily, she wasn't like right there.
It's a great story for her kids.
Yeah.
Uh, wow. There's one of the things that kept coming up at Biohack the Planet was, well, maybe it wasn't Biohack the Planet, maybe it was more about the press around Biohack the Planet, but they were saying like, well, what if people start genetically engineering diseases and stuff? And the thing that's become so clear during the pandemic for me is like, you don't have to. Like, why?
Yeah.
There's absolutely easier ways of doing this kind of damage.
Yeah.
I do worry that someone gets smart to this stuff and start hopping on planes. But you know, but there's a book that I read that I mean, it's a total page turner. It's junk. It's like it's bubble gum, but it's
Nothing
so
wrong
much.
with bubble gum.
It's called I Am Pilgrim. Have you read I Am Pilgrim?
Mm-mm.
So basically, it's about a terrorist who tries to resurrect the Black Plague, the Black Death. Sorry, the
Yeah, yeah.
Black Death, and the guy who's tracking him,
Mhm.
and it's just great because he's obviously done some research and obviously gone for the worst case scenario for things, but just how the guy goes about, setting this up is just. It was just absolutely fascinating. It was just a really fun and terrifying read, right?
Yeah. You know, it's
Um,
interesting. The Black Plague is still around. It didn't
yeah,
go
in fact,
away.
there was a resurgence.
Yeah. Yeah.
There was a
Well, so
resurgence, apparently.
there was a resurgence in the news recently, but in the US, there's always 8 or 10 cases every year.
Really?
But it's
Oh
treatable with
my.
antibiotics. Now, the
Oh,
scary
so it's
thing
no.
would be, yeah, the scary thing would be if you had an antibiotic resistant bubonic plague, but also there's a whole lot of resistance in humanity now because like we adapted because so all the people who weren't resistant got killed, at least in
Right.
Europe.
Yeah.
And
Well, and also don't viruses tend to stop killing their host after a certain point? Like, don't they start to become less
well, this is
virulent as they?
this is a bacteria, but yeah, viruses do. So viruses are parasites, and not all bacteria are. So some bacteria are just opportunistic for humans, and so if they start infecting humans, or if like the environment becomes saturated with it, they don't necessarily become less um, uh, virulent because they're like not obligate parasites. So generally, a
Right.
parasite doesn't want to kill its host. But like if you're a soil bacteria that's just taking the opportunity to infect a human and kill them and then move
Mhm.
back to the soil, there's no particular pressure to make
Right.
you not kill the human. Um, but like viruses like herpes, for example, you know, it's like the perfect virus. It's like 90% of the population has herpes simplex and almost nobody has symptoms. And so,
Really?
yeah, like if you get a cold sore, that's herpes simplex
Yeah.
outbreak. Otherwise, it just hides in your nerve cells and just
That's
chills
one of the
out
questions
there.
you get. Whenever you do a film, they always want to know whether you've had a cold sore in the last however long.
Mm,
That's wood. I
interesting.
don't get it. But my mom does. My
Yeah.
mom gets them. And I've got friends who like literally as soon as they get a job, it's like I'm like, oh
Oh
my god,
no.
it's like some kind of a stress related thing or something.
Yeah.
I guess I don't know. They literally get it whenever they get a job. They book a job and right away they go.
Oh, that's exactly what it is. Because, like, you know, it hides in your nerve cells until your immune system gets suppressed. And then it'll take the
Mm.
opportunity to go ahead and replicate. But otherwise, it'll just hide as a provirus. Like, it'll integrate into your genome and just chill out there and just be like, okay, I'm going to just hang out until there's an opportunity to spread. And then it'll spread and then hide again. And so that's how it ends up in 90% of the population. Because, like, you spread it and you don't even know. And most people are totally asymptomatic. Now, some people have terrible neurological symptoms, paralysis and pain and all kinds of stuff. And then things like Bell's
Mm.
palsy, you know, where like half your face is paralyzed. Um,
Yeah.
that's herpes simplex, infecting that nerve that comes through a tiny little canal out of, you know, through from your brain out into your skull. And so the facial nerve goes through that narrow canal, but if it's inflamed, it pinches off that nerve and it doesn't get signal and eventually dies. And so you get like paralysis, but usually it's only like 2 or 3 days.
My
Yeah,
friends just had that happen. Older guy, and
usually it's older.
he was rushed to hospital because they thought he was having a stroke, and it turns out it was Bell palsy. Yeah, I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was. Now I'll accuse him of having a sexually transmitted disease. That's great.
Well,
I'll feel embarrassed.
that's herpes two.
Oh, right. That's right. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. So there's two herpeses. Um, yeah. So yeah, and like the STD herpes, like genital herpes, is much rarer than herpes simplex, but or like herpes simplex 1. But herpes is really a fascinating virus. It's got a huge genome, like massive genome. I've got the whole. Well, this is gonna sound weird. I've got the whole thing in my freezer. Like, and
Just because it's the perfect, you see it as like the perfect virus.
not the perfect virus, just an interesting one. It may be like the perfect one for like parasiting humans, but
Really?
I'll say 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay, thanks so much, buddy. Sorry, I didn't realize it was so late.
Sorry.
Telling me my son and my wife were making dinner, so that's that's good. It's good. So I've got 5 minutes.
Okay. But
Once
yeah,
again,
but it's just interesting, and it's on a bacterial artificial chromosome. So it's like the entire viral genome and a bacterial artificial chromosome, so that it can replicate in bacteria. But at a copy number of 1. But it's also, but it is missing the thymidine kinase gene. Yeah, which makes it not sensitive to the drugs that are normally used to kill it, but also it makes it not able to replicate in nerve cells. So
basically it's a hobbled version that's not going to.
Yeah, it was developed for developing herpes vaccines.
So it's like, interesting. So it's like a model of it as opposed to an active. Of course,
Yeah.
you don't want people. Oops, stab myself. Then shit, honey. Yeah, that's not gonna go down well at dinner.
Exactly.
Wow. Well, dude, I should probably wrap up. But let's. I mean, look, please, like seriously, bug me because
Okay.
there's just things going on all the time, and I really want to catch up. And I've got to watch your stuff because I realize now that of course you have all these channels and stuff that I should be looking at. You have to look at Twitch though. I really think I think you could. I mean, even if you just did live sessions that you could then put onto YouTube or even just edit into sort of like highlights or whatever.
Have you seen Restream? That's what we've been using lately is Restream. So yeah, it's restream.io, I think. But you can stream onto Restream and it will put it on Facebook, Twitch, Periscope, YouTube, all of it simultaneously.
Right.
So that's what we've been doing lately.
That's pretty neat.
So I may be able to maybe sign up for Twitch and then hook my restream into Twitch.
As long as you can do the chat and everything, because that seems to
Yeah.
be where things, the payoff is you can connect with people, and if people like what you're doing, then they'll subscribe. You can also have it automatically bring up Patreon pages. The other thing is, and we got to have you on Barnacules. You got to come do Tech Talk sometime. I'll bug him about it, because first off, huge audience, like crazy. Well, sorry, by my standards, a huge audience. Like it's like there's like, you know, hundreds of people streaming live at this. Like, I mean, there's a lot going on.
Right.
And because he think actually he does it on YouTube now. He's doing live streaming on YouTube, and people can make donations and stuff. So he's actually making money on it. I just honestly just enjoy the chat. So figure I got my day. You know.
With Restream, it takes all the chat from everywhere and brings it all to Restream.
Oh, so what am I telling you? I should be listening to you then. All right, I'm looking at this Restream thing. Okay, I'll have to check that out then, because that does sound very cool.
Yeah, but I've been thinking about Twitch, but in my mind, it's just like video games. So it's good to know that it's more than just video games.
It's absolutely just video games, but that's why I think right now there's an opportunity potentially for other content, and that's because I think people are like, there's only so many freaking video games, and like they're not going to watch me play video games, so they'll watch you know. But if there's something that we're talking about that they're not normal, there is a chat. There's a just chatting like topic now that you can be a part of.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the other one that's come up recently, which I'm curious to try out, is something called Library. You heard of this?
Mm-mm.
It's like one of those like stupid spellings, which is the wrong way of spelling library, but have a look at it. It's its own platform, but you're not sharing anything. You don't share any of the monetary stuff. It's purely about a platform for people to monetize their content.
Okay.
And and what I like about it is, again, I think if anything, you need to spread it out as much as possible, because we don't own these platforms, right? So
yeah, the
platform decides to change something, and we're high and dry, right? So whereas Library,
like, one of Daria's streams got canceled by YouTube. Like it was like 8 minutes into the stream, and they're like, "Squish, no, you can't stream that." They're like, "This violates like the World Health Organization's something," even though it didn't. It was like human cell culturing stuff, but it was like tangentially related to the vaccine that we were testing.
I really think there's going to be, and it's something that I've been sort of talking about with some people as well, is how do we set up something different that keeps us away from, because any of the fun stuff that we want to do, whether it's biohacking or, you know, biomechanical stuff, any of the cyborg stuff, anything that's going to freak people out, want it on their platforms. Like, they just don't want it. They want it nice and neat and happy, and no one doing anything wrong. You know, how do we create a place where people can go that it will always be there? I mean, other than your own website, but trying to drive people to websites now is just, it's so freaking hard. But this Library one might be worth looking into, but we should totally talk about this with Barnacules, because he's gone through all sorts of, he just signed up to TikTok, and I was like, why the fuck are you on TikTok? And he's like, because you can go, it's another market. I'm like, I can't.
Yeah. I think it just got banned in the US.
Yeah, they're trying.
Yeah. I think it's like December or something like that.
Yeah, they said, I mean, I don't know when we started banning apps. I don't know
how. Like, how do you even do that?
What is the legal framework for these things?
Exactly. Where, like, under what authority can you just do that? Like, there wasn't a law passed by Congress.
Will sell your company to an American. In fact, to my friends at Audible. I mean, like,
it's like, what?
What the fuck is?
Exactly. Like, from whence do you derive the power to do that? You can't tell people. Like, you tell me what apps I can and can't download.
Yeah, no, it's bizarre. It's bizarre. Also, especially coming from a Republican president, who's normally it's all about keeping the government out of this stuff.
Yeah. I don't know how much of a Republican he really is, though. I mean, like half the Republicans hate him anyway. So
he's just opportunistic, I think. And I'm shocked at the Republicans for having put up with it. I mean, I was a small C conservative, like Republican for years, because my idea was I just felt the government should stay out of shit.
Yeah.
You
Which
know, but
nowadays you have to be a libertarian to think that.
well, that's it. So it's like, but now, you know, now I'm forced to vote for, you know, God, I'm not a huge fan of the Democrats either, to be honest.
Yeah.
But at this time, I don't see any point in voting Libertarian or any of these other specific. I don't see voting for people anymore because it's just these massive
Organizations
that we're
Yeah.
working.
See,
But that's why you want your own platform for stuff, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And see, that's one thing. I'll be voting I'll be voting Libertarian this time, but I'll tell you why. You know, I'm in Mississippi. There's no, like, all my votes are going to Trump anyway. It's a red state. So, I mean, it really doesn't matter whether I vote or not. Trump's going to win Mississippi, and all the Mississippi electors will elect Trump. But the popular vote, but the percentage of the popular vote does impact what powers third parties have to get into the debates and things like that. So if enough people vote Libertarian, then maybe next time around we'll have a Libertarian in the debates.
We did that up here. We did that. We voted for the Green Party, which I would never normally do. But we voted for them because we knew the Liberals were going to win,
Right.
or the NDP, depending on, you know, our riding specifically had a couple of parties that were pretty well guaranteed one of the two was going to win.
Right.
So we voted Green because we thought, you know what, at least that lets people know that there are people out there who are worried about what the fuck we're doing to our planet. So my son begged me to do that. In California, that's an interesting point though, because California it's a Democrat state. It's very unlikely that's going to get taken Republican. But as such, maybe it is worth looking for someone else because I stay out of politics. Certainly online, I stay out of politics. But
I try so hard.
I know. Only because I just don't feel like, first off, it's my place. I don't know enough about it. I know what I believe, and I think we should be to each other. I feel like COVID has definitely changed me. I'm more communist now than I ever was, and then I'm beginning to believe the government should step up and like look after people. People are freaking dying. Like, let's do something. I trust corporations less and less, even though I've always been a big fan of like letting technology and innovation, go. But I'm beginning to worry now because I feel like that same innovation and sort of entrepreneurial spirit is kind of crushing, any opportunity to get us out of this like global.
Somewhat, but I will say I do think that's what's going to be the answer in the end, because like there's like 70, 80 different coronavirus vaccines in FDA trials right now. And that's like the most vaccines that have ever been dedicated to one disease. And almost all of them are happening the radical majority of them are happening in the US. So there's a bunch of countries that as soon as there's a US approved, like even the one that got approved in Russia, they only did like phase 2 clinical trials, and countries are already buying them. And so like as soon as there's one that's FDA approved, I think, and the US will probably have 4 or 5 approved by next spring.
Buying a Russian vaccine. I'm sorry. It's like, what? We're fine. It worked fine. Only a few people died. It's fine.
Exactly.
Like, and also I'm afraid I just don't trust him at this point. I mean, he's like out of a fucking Bond movie.
He used to be KGB. He is literally out of a Bond movie.
He's a Bond villain. Like he's like, you can't write them. If you wrote this in a Bond movie, I would laugh at you.
Yeah.
The guy's like, yeah, sure. He wrestles bears and does some karate. I mean, like, like it's just.
I tell you what, the whole political. The whole political spectrum is full of unrealistic caricatures of humans. Like I haven't seen a human in politics in a long time.
That's the problem. Is I just freaking hate politicians. I hate them. Which is terrible because it's someone technically it's people who are dedicating themselves to running the country and stuff, but they all just seem to be so self-serving and stupid about stuff that I don't even listen. I mean, we've got one running Canada who looks great on postcards and stuff, and in press releases, and seems like a genuinely nice guy. But he's a career politician. He says whatever anyone wants to, wants to hear. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting old and grumpy. Maybe it's just because I'm hungry. I should go and eat my child's dinner.
Well, enjoy it.
Let's and if you don't mind, I'll bug Barnacles.
Yeah, sure.
Because I'm sure you will. I'm sure there are some connections there that could be of use to you. And also, I just think you get a kick out of you because this, it's all the kind of stuff that check him out. Make sure you want to be a part of.
Sure.
He's a goof like me, but maybe a little more extreme and younger, more energy than I have. Look, yeah, I mean, look, stay safe. Enjoy that awesome trip. And all the best to the family. I mean, God, well, it doesn't feel like that long ago. I mean, that we hung out in Vegas, but I hope it happens again soon. I'm not a particularly social beast anyway, but I just miss.
Yeah.
There's always a slight disconnect in these chats because there's always, even on a really good connection, there's just a little bit of stepping on, and I don't know. It's not quite the same.
Yeah, it's easy to interrupt each other and stuff like that because the lag is just right for that. Yeah.
And just over over drinks at a bar in Vegas is just a whole different thing. It's just was truly like one of the best experiences of my life. Like I cannot wait to go back to that. And just to feel like you're in the mix of stuff. You know what I mean? There's stuff going on, and like this is new. This is. I think what you're doing is fantastic. So I'll bug Barnacles and let's just try to, like I say, I'm horribly distracted. So bug me if you've got time to chat and you want to chat, try me. If I can't do it, I won't. If I can, I'd love to. So yeah,
sure,
we'll do. We'll just badger each other.
That sounds good.
All right, man.
Yeah,
all the best.
we'll do. And have a good weekend or good week. All right, man.
Yes, that's a good start. Baz has been home a day already because he somehow managed to con his mom into saying, he said, well, we didn't have you for the weekend because you were away and it's your birthday. So I really think I should hang out with you on Monday. And she fell for it. I was like, now's the time to ask if I can have a biolab in the basement.
Exactly.
All right, I'll get out of here.
All right, man.
Talk soon.
Good to see you. Bye.
Cheers.